She was bold, she was brilliant, she was everything the world thought a feminist should be. They called her inspiring. Men admired her confidence. Women followed her like a religion. She spoke of power, of freedom, of never settling for less. But what if behind every bold statement there was a silent hypocrisy? What if the woman preaching sisterhood destroyed another woman's home? And what if the one left behind, broken, forgotten, rose again, not with vengeance, but with grace? This isn't a story of love, betrayal, or ambition. It's the story of two women, one who took everything in the name of empowerment, and one who lost everything only to discover how powerful she truly was. By the time it ends, you'll question what true strength really means. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see that sometimes the quietest goodbye is the loudest victory. The hall shimmered under soft gold lights. Rows of women, ambitious, hopeful, determined, sat upright, eyes fixed on the stage. A large screen behind the podium read, Woman Who Laid, Simha Malhotra. She stepped up in a crisp black suit, heels clicking with purpose. There was silence, not the awkward kind, but the powerful kind. The kind that fills a room when someone knows they're about to command it. A pause, and then came the question, calm but sharp. When was the last time you took what you deserved without apologizing for it? The words hung in the air, a few heads tilted. Someone whispered, That's true. We are taught to be humble, she continued, to be gentle, to play small. A brief smile touched her lips. I didn't get here by being small. Now the room stirred. Someone clapped. Another woman nodded deeply. You don't rise by being nice, she said, leaning in just a little. You rise by being undeniable. Her voice didn't shout. It didn't need to. It carried the confidence of someone who had never once asked for permission. Every time a man talked over you in a meeting, every time you waited for someone to validate your worth, that ends now. The applause grew louder. And if someone tells you you're too much, she smiled wider. Good. That means you're finally enough for yourself. Now they were on their feet, a standing ovation. Inspired faces lit up across the room. Phones raised. Young women clapped like they had just heard the truth for the first time. But backstage, the glow faded quickly. She walked off with a sip of water, cool and composed. An assistant rushed behind her, breathless. That was so incredible, he said. The interns are waiting. They're so excited to meet you. Tell them to email. I don't have time for hand holding, she said without stopping. Her phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. "Ma- Madam, my daughter got into school, but I can't pay the fees. Can you help me?" She read it, blank expression, deleted, and walked on. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when Chaya arrived at the apartment, just like she did every day. Hair tied back, hands rough from years of work. She moved swiftly, cleaning, washing, organizing without needing to be told. But something felt off. She noticed it the moment the door opened. There was no smile, no greeting, just a cold look. The kind that tells you you're already guilty before you have even spoken. "You're late," came the sharp voice. "Only 5 minutes," Chaya thought. She had stopped by the school to collect the admission form. Her daughter had finally gotten in, a dream she had fought for silently, saving coins and skipping meals. "I went to my daughter's school," she began, voice soft, almost apologetic. "You should have informed me. This isn't a charity," the woman cut in, already walking away. Chaya followed hesitantly. "I tried messaging you." There was a pause, and then a slight smirk. "I don't entertain emotional blackmail." That sentence cut deeper than it should have. Chaya stood still, her pride slowly folding into hurt. "I just wanted to ask if—" She started again, but the words stumbled. "You think I owe you something?" The tone was calm yet cold. "Let me make it simple. I need someone reliable, someone who understands professionalism." The word hit like a slap. Professionalism. Chaya lowered her eyes, not out of shame, but because anger had begun to rise, and she had learned to swallow it over the years. "You're relieved of your work. Today will be your last day." Saying that, she turned and walked back into a sleek, spotless living room, the one Chaya had dusted that very morning. Outside the apartment, Chaya stood for a moment, silent, still. The building towered behind her like a reminder of the gap between their worlds. She clutched her daughter's school papers tighter, then walked away, slowly but with a strange strength in her steps, because pain wasn't new to her. It was just another day at work, meetings, reports, coffee, the usual rhythm. And then Seema saw him. He stood by the glass wall of the conference room, tall, effortlessly well dressed, eyes focused on something in his hand, probably a client file. There was nothing loud about him, nothing attention seeking, but something about the way he carried himself. It pulled her in. Sharp jawline, a calm, grounded presence, and most dangerously, he wasn't looking at her. She tilted her head slightly, amused. That was rare. Most men looked, most men fumbled, most men tried, but he didn't even glance her way. At lunch, she passed him again, this time slower, heels deliberately loud on the marble floor. His eyes flicked up for a second, polite, indifferent, and went back to the paper in his hand. Married. That was the whisper she caught from the HR desk later. Raghav had a wife, photographer apparently, soft spoken, worked from home. They had been together for years, and still, the lack of attention annoyed her. Not because she needed validation. No, she told herself. It wasn't about ego, it was about choice. Her choice. She believed a woman should never hesitate to take what she wants. That's what she taught in every panel, every speech. Why should this be different? The next morning, she made sure they were in the same meeting. She asked questions only he could answer, leaned forward ever so slightly when he spoke, threw in a compliment about his presentation style. Casual, sharp, still nothing. A faint smile, a professional nod, and then he was gone. But not for long. Because if there was one thing Seema had mastered, it was getting under someone's skin. And she had just begun. Raghav started noticing. Not in the obvious way, not with wandering eyes or lingering smiles, but in the silence between meetings, in the way her name appeared too often on his schedule, in the way her perfume trailed behind even after she had left the room. He didn't say anything, not to her, not to anyone, but inside, a tension had started to build, the kind that creeps in when boundaries being slowly, deliberately tested. She, on the other hand, was storm in control. Casual coffee breaks became spontaneous drop ins. She laughed a little louder when he was nearby, asked questions that didn't need answers, brushed past just slightly too close. And all the while, she wore the same face, calm, confident, charming. You work too much, she said once, leaning by his desk as he typed. You know, married men often forget they're allowed to feel alive too. He paused just for a second. Uh, I'm doing fine, he replied, voice firm but not unkind. She smiled, not offended, intrigued. The game was on. Later that week, she accidentally ran into him at the bookstore near the office. Asked about his favorite authors, mentioned she loved photography too, just like his wife. Maybe we should all meet sometimes, she said with a playful smirk. He gave a tight nod, no answer, but something had shifted. Because temptation doesn't always enter through the door. Sometimes it creeps through cracks, in silence, in ego, in the lonely space of tired love. And she knew that. She knew exactly where to knock. Raghav wasn't sure when it began. Maybe it was the common ground in their conversations, or the way her words echoed in his head during late night drives. Maybe it was just the attention, sharp, unwavering, hard to ignore. He told himself it was harmless. He was married after all, happily, mostly, or at least peacefully. So when he invited her to dinner, just a casual gesture, a thank you for helping him with the project. He didn't think too much of it. She's coming here? Mira asked that evening, stirring something gently on the stove. He nodded. Yeah, yeah, just for dinner. She helped me with the Gupta pitch. Thought it would be nice. His wife smiled, the kind of smile that holds 100 unsaid things. Of course, I'll sit an extra plate. The doorbell rang just as the rice finished steaming. He opened it, and there she stood. Crisp sari, delicate earrings, hair tucked neatly to one side, effortlessly striking. She stepped in with ease, like she belonged there. Lovely place, she said, eyes gliding over the photo frames, the soft yellow lightning, warm, real. Raghav gestured between them. Seema, this is Mira, my wife. Mira, this is Seema from work. I've told you about her. Mira extended her hand, smiled polite. Of course. Nice to meet you. Pleasure's mine, came the warm, rehearsed reply. Dinner began. They talked about work, travel, and childhood stories. Raghav laughed more than usual, she noticed. So did Mira. Somewhere between desert and silence, it happened. She leaned in to refill his glass, fingers brushing slightly against his hand. Accidental, or maybe not. He didn't flinch. He didn't even notice. But Mira did. And when she looked across the table, she saw it. The look in the other woman's eyes. Not sweet, not admiring, challenging. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a tiny smirk, a raised brow, a slow sip of wine that didn't need words. Mira smiled back, a little tighter now, her posture straightened, her eyes sharper. But she didn't speak. She didn't fight. She simply observed. Because sometimes the loudest storm begins in silence. And love, when tested, doesn't scream. It watches, it waits, and it remembers. Mira had always been good at reading the quiet, the space between words, the way silence could say what mouths couldn't. Lately, Raghav had become quieter. He still smiled, still laughed at her jokes, still kissed her forehead before leaving the work, but the light never quite reached his eyes. One evening while plating dinner, she shared her latest project, a photo essay capturing night walkers in the city, tea vendors, traffic cops, lonely metro stations. Her eyes sparkled as she spoke about the shoot, her hands alive with excitement. That sounds incredible, he said, smiling in place. But something about the way he reached for his water, distracted, distant, dulled her joy. The glow in her face faded slightly. He was there, but not really. She didn't say anything that night or the next until the exhibition day arrived. It ends around 11, she said, picking up her camera bag. Will you come to pick me up? Of course, he replied without hesitation, dropping a kiss on her cheek. Text me when you're done. She nodded and left, believing he would show. But the clock kept ticking. 11 p.m., 11:30, 12:10. Still no Raghav. By then, the venue had emptied. The curator offered to call a cab, but she declined politely. She sat outside on the concrete bench near the station, legs tucked under her coat, holding the camera like it was the only warmth left. Meanwhile, Raghav was laughing somewhere, a warm glow in his chest, a different kind of high. He had stayed back late with Seema, lost track of time in maze of ideas, furtive banter, and the thrill of being seen a new light. By the time he walked through the front door at home, he didn't even check the time. He just dropped onto the bed and closed his eyes, still smiling. Morning, the sunlight streamed soft and gold, but the air felt oddly still. No kettle sounds, no distant hum of her playlist, just absence. He sat up slowly. Then it hit him. The exhibition, the pickup, her waiting. His stomach sank. He rushed out of the house, heart thudding. As he parked near the station, she was still there, slouched, eyes half closed, camera bag resting on her lap. She looked up the moment he approached, eyes calm, no anger, no coldness. Finally, you're back, she said with a faint smile. No accusation, just exhaustions. She stood, walked past him quietly, and slid into the passenger seat. The drive was silent. He looked at her, opened his mouth, but before the apology could form, she leaned her head against the window and drifted into sleep. Even tired, she looked beautiful. Her lashes cast shadows on her cheeks. The corner of her lips curved in a way that made his chest ache, but not with love, but with discomfort. And then the silence shattered. His phone buzzed. Seema, her name glowing on the screen like a flickering match. He stared at it, then at the sleeping woman beside him. No answer. Not yet. He dropped her home quietly, watched her walk in, dragging her feet but holding herself together, then turned the car around and drove straight to work, straight back to the storm he was choosing, one quiet betrayal at a time. Meanwhile, Mira walked into the house, just took off her shoes quietly, hung her bag, and disappeared into the bedroom. Inside, she sat at the edge of the bed, fingers pressed to her temples. The silence wrapped around her, thick and unkind. Slowly, her shoulders began to shake. No sobs, just tears, silent, steady, slipping down her cheeks and soaking into her sleeves. She cried not because he forgot, but because he didn't remember on his own. Because something inside her knew he wasn't really hers anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she had to start preparing to let go. The office light cast a warm gold on Seema's face as she leaned against Raghav's desk, sipping her coffee like it was wine. She laughed at something he said, or maybe didn't say, the kind of laugh that made heads turn. She knew what she was doing, and she was good at it. Raghav, sitting across from her, didn't realize how often he looked at her now, how often he sought her validation in small ways. A nod, a smirk, a subtle good job, only she could deliver with that tone. Cool, amused, dangerous. She never mentioned Mira, never asked how things were at home. But every time he smiled at her, she saw it, the invisible crack widening. The next evening, as he prepared to leave the office, she called out, casual but sweet. Heading home already? She asked. Yeah, he smiled, slinging his bag over his shoulder. She tilted her head. If you're not rushing, I know a place that serves killer masala chai. You could use a break, no? He hesitated, and then stayed. Meanwhile, Mira stood on the balcony at home, watching the streetlights flicker on. A soft breeze brushed her face. The silence in the house wasn't unfamiliar anymore. It had settled like an uninvited guest. She didn't cry this time. Instead, she walked to her cupboard and pulled out the dusky canvas bag that hadn't seen daylight in months. Her travel kit. A note she had scribbled long ago fell out. Find stories, capture them. You're enough. She stared at the words for a long time and smiled, not from joy, but something deeper. A beginning. Later that week, Seema brushed past Raghav in the corridor, fingers trailing his arm for just a second. A glance, a pause, a moment that meant nothing to others, but everything to her. He didn't stop her, didn't stop himself. By now, he had stopped calling home when working late, stopped noticing Mira's absence in bed when he returned. One night, when Seema handed him a drink in her apartment and said, You really should stop pretending, he didn't ask what she meant, because he already knew. He just wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. The first thing he noticed after months was a silence. Not heavy, not cold, just quiet. Mira had begun waking up earlier than him. Sometimes she wasn't even home when he opened his eyes. No notes, no calls, just the scent of her fading perfume and the occasional hum of the washing machine left behind. Raghav sat at the dining table scrolling through his phone, half waiting to hear her voice call out about breakfast. It never came. She walked in at 9:30, sunglasses still on, camera bag slung over her shoulder. Her hair was tied in a low messy bun, her lips stained pink from tea or maybe some new lip balm. Hey, she said, placing a roll of the film on the counter. Don't forget to water the plant in the balcony. It's leaning. He looked up, almost confused by her calm. Where were you? He asked. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then smiled faintly. Out. Shot a fisherman's protest by the harbor. Cut some strong frames. Might get published. There was pride in her voice. Not arrogance, just purpose. He opened his mouth to ask more, but she had left. Later that day, when he came back home from work, he found her laughing on a call, sitting cross legged on the living room floor editing photos. He watched her from the doorway. This woman who used to wait up for him, who once planned dinner around his mood, now she stopped doing any of that. And it unsettled him. That evening, Seema walked into the cabin, crisp in a charcoal sari, her voice honeyed. Big pitch coming up, she said, placing the file in front of him. Let's kill it together. He nodded, distracted. You okay? She asked. Yeah, just. He paused. Mira's different these days. She raised a brow, then smiled, slow and knowing. Maybe she's finally listening to what you couldn't say. He looked at her sharply, as if to question the intent, but the words never left his lips. That night, Mira stood in front of the mirror, applying kajal with steady hands. Where are you going? He asked. She looked at him through the reflection. There's an art screening downtown. They asked me to speak about my photo essay. He was silent. She added casually, Don't wait up. And then, just like that, she left. No drama, just freedom. And for the first time, Raghu felt the wall of his world shift. He wasn't being cheated on, he was being left behind. The office buzzed with celebration. Balloons, cakes, and the soft clink of glasses filled the top floor. Raghav had just been promoted to senior strategy head, a title people had fought years for. Seema, standing in a stained emerald blouse, raised her glass. To the man who sees beyond charts and numbers, she said, her gaze fixed only on him. Congratulations, Raghav. You earned this. The applause was loud, but his eyes were only on her. Later, they stepped out with a few colleagues to an upscale lounge. Under the dim amber light, Seema moved like she owned the night. Every man noticed her, some subtly, others not so. But she only leaned in closer to Raghav, her laugh louder when he cracked a joke, her fingers resting lightly on his arm, her eyes never straying. He felt taller, sharper, wanted. And when she kissed him outside in the haze of moonlight, he didn't stop her. He pulled her closer instead. That night, they didn't return alone. The next morning, he went straight to the office. He checked his phone lazily. No message, no note, nothing. Then he froze. A photo popped up on his feed. Mira surrounded by a group of smiling children, cutting a small cake. Her cheeks glowed, her eyes sparkled. Caption, My best birthday. Pure joy, no pretense. His gut twisted. Her birthday. He opened the old chat, the ones where she had mentioned it 3 weeks ago. He had replied with a thumbs up and forgotten. But it wasn't the forgetting that stabbed him. It was her joy, her peace without him. Shima climbed out of a car in the middle of a narrow slum street, heels clicking against uneven ground. Her silk scarf clashed with the dusty air. She had heard Mira was here, and she was, crouched beside a young girl, clicking a candid shot, her head tied up carelessly, dirt smudged on her kurti. And yet she looked radiant. Shima looked up, eyes narrowed. This is what you do, she said, scanning Mira's surrounding with obvious disgust. Playing Mother Teresa in the mud? Mira stood, brushing her hands. Doing what I love. Why are you here? Sima smirked. Raghav didn't tell you, did he? Last night was intimate. And it was your birthday, wasn't it? She tilted her head. Interesting choice of celebration. Mira looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. Slow, soft, unshaken. Thank you, she said. Sima blinked. For what? For making things clear. And with that, Mira turned and walked away, towards her camera, her work, and her joy. Sima stood there, amused, confused, and oddly cold. Because for the first time, she couldn't read the woman in front of her. And that terrified her more than losing. Raghav sat in his cabin, staring at the screen, fingers unmoving on the keyboard. The numbers, the targets, all of it blurred under the weight of a single realization. She hadn't called. She hadn't messaged. She hadn't cried. Mira had disappeared from his day to day without drama, and somehow that silence echoed louder than any outburst ever could. His phone buzzed. Seema, lunch? Or did your conscience already eat? He stared at the screen and let it go dark. The door knocked lightly before opening. It was Seema, poised, smiling, perfect. Thought I'd drop in, she said. You've been quieter today. He forced a smile. Just tired. She sat across from him, her heels crossing elegantly. You're not regretting last night, are you? He looked up sharply. She laughed. Relax, Raghav. I'm not the clingy type. But I must say, you seemed like a man who'd finally claimed what he deserved. Something in his chest tightened. Deserved. He repeated slowly. Yes, she leaned forward. You're not made for small lives or emotional wrecks. You're made for power, for precision. He thought of Mira, crouched in the slum, laughing over a muddy lens. Then he thought of himself, in a luxury apartment surrounded by applause, and yet hollow. Do you love her? Sima asked suddenly. He blinked. What? Mira. Still? She clarified, watching his reaction like a hawk. He didn't respond. Because if you do, she continued, her tone tightening, then last night meant nothing, and I don't like being someone's mistake. He stood up. I need air. As he walked out, she stared at his back, her confidence cracking for the first time. Meanwhile, Mira walked into a quiet cafe, camera bag slung over her shoulder. Her eyes scanned the room until they found the editor from the art magazine she had been chasing for months. They shook hands, exchanged smiles, and within minutes she was showing him her portfolio. He looked impressed. Your work has life, he said. We'd love to feature you and possibly offer a full time curation. Mira smiled, eyes bright. Outside the cafe, her phone buzzed. Raghav. I'm sorry. She looked at it for a moment, then put it away. No reply. Back in the office, Sima opened her email. A message from HR popped up. Subject: Promotion nomination review withdrawn. She stared at it, lips parting slightly. Another ping. This time from the same magazine Mira had just left. Subject: Feature preview. Through her lens, Women in Forgotten Spaces. There she was, Mira, smiling in a muddy alley. While, while everything Sima had built, all her calculated steps, began to loosen beneath her feet. Sima stood near the window in Raghav's cabin, voice cold and razor sharp. You can't walk away now, Raghav, she said, her arms folded, her tone somewhere between command and plea. You've come too far. You belong with me. He stared at her, eyes empty of the charm he once found magnetic. I don't, he said simply. Her jaw tensed. You think Mira will forgive you? After everything? His phone buzzed. Mira. Happy birthday, Raghav. I've got a surprise for you. Make sure you come home early and check it. He blinked. A breath caught in his throat. The message hit differently. Warmth, familiarity, grace. And suddenly the fog lifted. He looked at Seema, really looked. It was never love, he said quietly. It was a storm. But Mira, she's peace. Seema scoffed, voice rising. So you're choosing her after everything? After being with me? I made a mistake, he said. But not choosing her would be bigger one. You'd regret this, she hissed. I'll ruin you. I'll make sure you. Go ahead, he cut it. I've already lost enough. Nothing you say scares me now. He walked past her without flinching, not looking back. She stood frozen, stunned by the casual dismissal. Her hand trembled as she picked up the remote and turned on the office TV, only for her stomach to knot at the side. A well lit stage, applause. A woman stepped forward gracefully, accepting an award with a calm, radiant smile for campaigning education among underprivileged communities, using her own art and proceeds to fund over 30 scholarships. The camera zoomed in. It was Mira. The announcer continued, Special thanks for Chaya Devi, whose daughter now studies in Delhi, all thanks to Mira's contribution. The screen shifted to a short clip of Chaya, tearful and glowing with gratitude. Seema's knees buckled slightly. That was the maid she had once fired, the very girl she dismissed as weak. And now she was the reason a girl studied in Delhi. A bitter taste climbed her throat. For the first time in years, she felt small. Meanwhile, Raghav's footsteps were urgent as he raced up the stairs of their apartment. breath shallow with anticipation and guilt. He pushed the door open. The lights were soft. The room glowed in warm yellow, fairy lights twisted around the windows. Birthday balloons hovering above a small table. A small cake sat untouched. His eyes moved to the wall. A framed photo of him and Seema, laughing, arms around each other. Not taken by him, not shared by him, but known by her. His heart dropped. On the bed lay an envelope. His hands trembled as he opened it. A letter in Mira's handwriting. No hard feelings, Raghav. I understand people fall in love. It's not anyone's fault. So, yeah, have a great life with Seema. Don't worry about me feeling sad, because I'm not. I've discovered something more beautiful than love, freedom, and I'm gifting it to you on your birthday. Signed, Mira. He pulled out the last paper in the envelope. Divorce papers. Signed. Only one space left. His. He sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the letter pressing on his chest like a boulder. The room spun, but one throat stayed still. She knew. She always knew. And she loved him anyway, until she didn't. Epilogue 6 months later. A soft breeze rustled the pages of the magazine in Sima's hand. She sat at an upscale cafe, alone, hidden behind her sunglasses, sipping a bitter black coffee she barely tasted. On the front page of the magazine, Lens of Change, Mira Singh's exhibition tour Europe, profits to fund 500 girls' education. Her photograph was radiant, dressed simply in a cotton sari, camera around her neck, her smile calm but unshakable. The same woman Sima once mocked. A waitress walked by and noticed the cover. She's inspiring, isn't she? She said, unprompted. Real grace, real feminism. Sima nodded slowly. For once, she had nothing to say. Elsewhere, Raghav stood among shelves of books at NGO run children's library. He now volunteered part time on weekends, photographing projects, teaching photography to teens, quietly without recognition. He carried a faded photo in his wallet now. The two of them on their anniversary, Mira laughing with eyes closed. He hadn't heard from her since she moved out, but her warmth lived quietly in the changes he made. And Mira, she stood in a quiet studio in Amsterdam, hanging her final photo for the exhibit. A girl in school uniform, smiling with a bag on her shoulder. Chaya's daughter. The gallery owner approached her. They want your story for a Netflix documentary. Title suggestion: Unloved, Unbroken. What do you think? Mira smiled. Maybe call it unapologetically free. Then she walked to the window, watching the sky shift hues above foreign streets, and breathe in. No regrets, no revenge, just freedom. I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you for listening till the end.